First time, thank you for doing that. We want to keep just spreading the information and the encouragement and the engagement as we continue to fight to keep our democracy strong and alive and fair and equitable and just for everybody here, okay? That's what we're all in this for. Okay. So what else do I need to mention before we get going? I think the live stream has begun, so if you have some friends and you want to say on Facebook, you can watch this. They can watch it on Facebook. If you want to post to Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whoever you like to post to, use the hashtag ACLU-Flights, and that's how we'll share information about what's happening. And what else? Oh, the raffle. So hopefully you got a raffle ticket. If you did not, please get one. We have some cool prizes at the end of the evening, as always. Must be present to win. Okay, here's the other thing. Who's a member of the ACLU? Yes, the numbers are growing. And they have been growing, quite frankly, since roughly November 2016. I don't know what happened then that made things get excited. But we've really loved having new people come and get engaged with us. In a minute, I'm going to share some things, ways that you can be engaged, and things that we can thank you for your participation. And if you haven't joined, we really want you to join, because here's the thing. The ACLU has been around about 100 years. It's here to uphold the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. We are a nonpartisan organization, and we've held every president accountable, even the ones that you liked the best did something that probably wasn't right, and we held them accountable for that. As it turns out, in the past year or so, we've really kind of been in the fight for our lives across so many different fronts. And what I want to tell you is that we have been busy. We've had more than 120 legal actions against the current president. And we have been beating him on the Muslim ban, we've been beating him on abortion rights, on immigrant rights, and on discrimination, and again, thank you, yes. So it's not easy, but it is incredibly necessary. I don't feel like it's an overstatement to say that really democracy is at stake, and it's so important for us who believe in it to continue to fight for it. So if you haven't joined us as a member, do it. Honestly, it's cheap, it's easy. You can go to aclu-wa.org/join and do it right now. And when you do that, it enables us to let people know, whether we're going before legislators or the court, that we're millions strong. We're millions who believe in democracy. So last month, I got to share with you, if you were here, a reunion story about a long-awaited, joyous ending to a harrowing tale of our client who's from Somalia and who was separated from his family because of the first Muslim ban. And that was a huge win for that family, and also for other people, refugees who were impacted by it. And so we're glad about that. But honestly, the facts in the immigration realm continue to be mostly dire. Just last week, you might have seen that we filed a lawsuit against the Northwest Detention Center down in Tacoma.
Thank you.
Yes, right? Okay, so if you don't know, the Northwest Detention Center has been retaliating against hunger strikers, against people who've spoken up. But this is actually a First Amendment right that people have to speak up, even if they're in detention. And this person was really brutally attacked. He still doesn't have vision back in his eye, and he'd been put in isolation and beaten, and we are suing them. And I feel pretty confident we're gonna bring this one home also. So stay with us on that. But 2 weeks ago in Tukwila, a 32-year-old father actually called the police because he saw a prowler on his property. And then rather than arresting the prowler, the police turned the father over to ICE. Boo. And so that is a major boo. So feel free at any time to boo or cheer, right? So here's the thing, when people ask law enforcement for help, and this is what happens then, it disincentivizes others to ask for help, whether they feel like they are legally here or are not legally here, and it makes us all less safe when that happens. When people don't feel like they can call upon authorities for assistance, it makes all of us less safe. So now this person is also at the Northwest Detention Center. And although the police did eventually find the suspected prowler, they didn't arrest him because they didn't have probable cause. Now listen, I don't want to, probable cause is important, so I want them to have that before they arrest people, but it's kind of disturbingly ironic that the person who called for help is now locked up. You also know that more than 800,000 Dreamers are hanging in the balance, and these are people who have been getting their education here, paying taxes here, working, contributing to our society, and we still, their lives are held in the balance on behalf of this whole wall thing, which, you know, is not the message that we ought to be sending to our friends and neighbors. So, lots of things, but I do want to give an immigrants' rights victory before I introduce our speaker, because something great has happened, and some of you may have participated in this. So here in King County, we just passed an immigrant rights ordinance. Do people know about that? It took months and months of really hard work, but some of the things that this ordinance does is it prevents the use of county funds and resources for federal immigration enforcement, which is illegal, so good. We're just making a strong assertion that you're not supposed to do that. It makes clear that King County can't deny anyone county services based on immigration status unless it's otherwise required by law. It prohibits King County employees from inquiring about a person's immigration status. It requires, this is a big one, it requires Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, also known as ICE, to get a judicial warrant, not an ICE warrant, which is frankly a piece of paper somebody writes in an office somewhere, to get a judicial warrant to access non-public parts of King County property or databases, and that database issue is a really important one. You've probably been reading about that too. It does a lot of other great things. Now, who was here when our Police Practices and Immigrant Rights Counsel, Inoka Herat, presented? Okay, so you saw what a force of intelligent, wonderful nature she is, right? Well, she was behind that on behalf of the ACLU, and then also thanks to countless community groups. I can't tell you how many people, community groups, individuals who showed up and testified. Many of you responded to our action alerts, and the ordinance passed just yesterday. So I just want us to feel good about that right now. So let's move on to our presentation for tonight. So I'm really glad you're here. This is another really crucial issue that goes to the heart, not only of the legal matter of it, but also the human matter, the human experience of not having shelter. People living outside face obstacles and struggles that most of us will never have to imagine. Last week, when we went for, 5, 6, 7 days without even breaking 40 degrees, and we have people living in tents, we have people not even having tents, and then, of course, we have this horrible problem where the city has just been going in, slashing the tents, taking the stuff away, and leaving people without even that last little vestige of humanity and safety and stability. So we can't ignore that tragedy of homelessness. We have so much work to do. No matter who you are, where you live, how much property you have, you still have rights, okay? No matter who you are, where you are, what property you have, you still have rights. And that's what we've had to fight to. Nowhere in the Constitution does the government say it can take your stuff just because you happen to live outside, or because someone thinks your things are dirty, or that your sleeping bag is wet, which is in fact one of the justifications someone made for taking away someone's things. Their sleeping bag was wet. Hello, Seattle, it rains here. Yeah. So, Mahatma Gandhi said, a nation's greatness is measured by how it treats its weakest members, by how it treats the people who are most in trouble and who are most struggling. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And I'm really happy to introduce one of our staff attorneys who you haven't heard from before so far. Her name's Breanne Schuster. She's been leading the ACLU Washington's case on this matter of the improper governmental taking of the belongings of people who are unsheltered. Before joining the ACLU staff in 2015, so just in almost not even quite 3 years, she's done some pretty amazing work. But before coming with us, she had attended the University of Wisconsin-Madison, spent a year learning French in Brussels, graduated from Seattle University School of Law, was the executive editor of the Seattle Journal for Social Justice, and also volunteered with the Homeless Rights Advocacy Project. She is wonderful. She's passionate about this work, and please join me in welcoming her. Hopefully she's near me somewhere.
All right, thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you all for being here. The true test is whether or not I can figure out how to use the PowerPoint. Is it supposed to do that? Okay. All right, thank you. So I brought a PowerPoint, I promise. Hopefully it'll be not much of a lecture, more of kind of an interactive discussion. But before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty of what our litigation is, what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish, I thought it would be helpful to give a little bit of context and background to what really brought us to this point, why we think this litigation is so important, and what we're working with here. So it's probably no surprise to most of you that live in Seattle-King County that we are in a pretty significant housing crisis. Especially for those of you that may pay rent, continue to see that go up every year. But we've really seen this steady increase, both in Seattle and nationally, of rates of homelessness increasing in the last 5 years. And what's particularly prominent in what we're seeing is there are especially high or disproportionately increasing rates of people who are living without shelter. So while the kind of rates of homelessness have increased in the past 5 years, the rates of people that are living outside or in their vehicles, that are living in a tent, that are trying to make shelter with tarps and whatever materials they can comb together, those rates are increasing exorbitantly more than overall rates of homelessness. And so I threw some numbers up here on the slide just to kind of illustrate that. You can see in 2013, there are a little less than 3,000 people that were living outside. Today, it's probably closer to 6,000. And that's really an underestimate. So this is only accounting for people that are living outside without any form of stable shelter. It's not accounting for people that are living in temporary shelters, emergency shelters, that are doubled up with friends, that are in transit, that are living with family members, and that might be living outside the next night. It's also not accounting by any means for all of the people that are in this position, right? So this is an estimate. This is people going out, counting one night in January, and that's also tends to be when shelters are the most full. So in March or in April, these numbers are probably quite a bit higher as well. So what we know, and this is probably, it seems like a logical statement, but I think it bears repeating again and again. The reason that we're seeing so many people living outside and living in poverty is because we do not have enough affordable housing for people. And it's not just me saying that, there have been a lot of studies that agree with me. So a couple years ago, I think now, the Department of Commerce did a study, and they actually looked at a number of different factors, including housing rates, housing rates, they did look at that as well, and vacancy rates. They also looked at income and rental rates. But in addition to that, they looked at a bunch of other things that we hear contribute to or cause homelessness, right? So they looked at employment, which, as it turns out, is actually pretty stable, if not increasing. They looked at educational attainment. And as it turns out, that's also pretty stable. More people are graduating from college, more people are graduating from high school, particularly in the last 5 or so years. They also looked at drug use and addiction. And as that turns out, also pretty stable. We've seen a little bit of an increase in some forms of drug use, but we've seen a decrease in use and dependence on other drug use, and so there's not really any correlation between that. They've also looked at family composition and stability. Still stable, not really any correlation. But what they did find is that with every $100 increase in rent, it's associated with an average, all things else being equal, and 15% increase in homelessness statewide. And that rate dramatically increases if you're living in a non-metro area. in some cases up to 32%. So in addition to those numbers, obviously this is compounded by numerous other systems of oppression, right? So we know that people of color are disproportionately represented in the homeless population, LGBT youth are disproportionately and overly represented, and many other marginalized groups that are discriminated against in other ways in addition to their housing status. We also learned, which I think is a really important thing to remember, is that most people, at least in Seattle-King County, that are currently houseless, became houseless here. So nearly 80% of people that Seattle surveyed, when they became houseless, they were already living here or working here, or both. And the vast majority of people that weren't from here were from Snohomish, they were from Pierce, they were from other nearby counties. So the kind of myth that gets tossed around a lot that, oh, well, we have more people here because Seattle is so compassionate, we offer so many services, it's just simply not true. We have people here because Seattle is an unaffordable place for people to live, and so they can't afford their rent or their housing payment, and then they become homeless. What I also think is really interesting when we kind of talk about that is that there are a lot of cities, particularly kind of in the East Coast and other areas, where they have right to shelter, either policies or kind of bills of rights. And in those cities, they actually have lower rates of people that are living outside. So by helping people get, I guess by protecting their rights doesn't increase homelessness either, it actually helps people, which seems logical, but sometimes we hear the reverse, right? So in addition to knowing we have a lack of affordable housing, when we're talking about people that are living outside in particular, we also have a severe lack of alternative spaces for people to go. So on a regular night in Seattle, nearly all, especially in the winter, almost all the shelter beds are full, and you still get the numbers that we talked about on the first slide. You still are getting thousands and thousands of people that are forced to live outside. So what does that mean? What it means is that many of our clients, many of the people that we're working to represent, they're doing the best they can to make do of their situation, right? They're building communities, they're building homes. I've seen some really incredible, creative ways that people have heated their spaces and make their food every day that I wish somebody could teach me how to do, because I like know how to use the stove, and that's kind of my limitation. But so what people are doing is making the best of their situation. But the thing is, they still need to do the things that everyone does, right? We are all people, regardless of our income, regardless of our living situation. We all have to eat. We all have to sleep. We all have to use the bathroom. We need a shower. And we all generate waste, right? Tonight we're going to have a bunch of incredible beer, and at some point, all of those cups, all of those cans are gonna go into a bin, and then the city is gonna go pick it up for us, right? They're gonna dispose of it, they're gonna figure out something to do for it. They're helping us operate a sewer system. They're making sure that there's running water when we have to go to the bathroom here and we wanna wash our hands, right, or use the toilet. But if you're creating your own shelter, you're creating your own community because you have no other alternatives, the city isn't providing those resources and services for you. I have a slide up, or a photo, and I wouldn't by any means attest to its accuracy, but what I did was just a quick Google of public restrooms that are open 24/7. And you can do it yourself if you are feeling ambitious tonight. But as you can see from the slide, there's maybe 5 or 6 restrooms in the entire city of Seattle that are open to the public 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you are a houseless person and you have to go to the bathroom and you're in Ballard, good luck, you can walk a few miles, maybe you can catch a bus, however many times a day that you need to go to the bathroom. Unfortunately, rather than providing resources for people to be able to make this kind of middle ground meet until we can provide enough affordable housing for people, what we're seeing is cities, both Seattle but across the country and across the state, are utilizing criminalization as a response rather than helping people in their current situation. And when I say criminalization, what I kind of mean at a basic level is that we're targeting a particular group for exclusion from public space. And this can look like a lot of different things, right? It can look like putting up fencing across the city so that there's nowhere for people to go and actually sleep and eat and live and set up their belongings. It can mean that we're prohibiting activities that people need to engage in order to survive, right? Like going to the bathroom, eating in public, asking for help, sleeping or camping in a public space. It can also look like taking people's stuff and either throwing it away or giving people no opportunity to give it back. And we're seeing the criminalization of poverty kind of evolve in different ways today, but it's also nothing new, right? We have these laws in many ways have their roots in kind of vagrants, the English colonial vagrancy laws, right? About excluding people more explicitly, like you cannot be here at a certain time or a certain day or in this certain space. So it looks a little bit different now. And we're also seeing it with a number of other, this tactic or this strategy being employed with many different groups. So it's not just poor people, we're seeing it with people that have mental health issues, we're seeing increased criminalization, and we have, right, with people that have addiction issues, and so on. So I'm just gonna give a kind of just a brief, so there's a homeless rights advocacy practicum at Seattle, and a few years ago they did a survey of cities across Washington and the types of behaviors or conduct that cities criminalized. And this is, as they determined, they only did a survey, I think, of 72 counties and cities. But what they found is that the vast majority of them do prohibit some sort of behavior or have multiple ordinances that prohibit behavior that is very unique to people that are in poverty and that are having to live outside and are engaging in this type of conduct or behavior for the sole reason that they have nowhere else to go, right? They have nowhere else to engage in it. So where do the sweeps and where do our litigation fit in? And how does property and our property rights kind of all fit in? So I never really get to do interactive activities in my courtroom, so I'm hoping you'll indulge me a little bit. But I would love to know, raise your hand if you think the government has a right to stop you when you're walking down the street and just go through your stuff. You could all be lawyers, okay. What about if you're just sitting in a park? Can the police come up to you and say, we want to see what's in your bag? Okay. So what if you're in a park and you're maybe forgot the city ordinance or the law that says you're not supposed to be drinking in public, and you brought a bottle of champagne? Then does that change anything? Can the government come and ask for your stuff then? No one? Okay, what if your stuff is kind of crummy? Like it's really dirty. It was raining all day and your backpack is wet, and also it's like from your great-great-grandma. No? Doesn't change it? All right, what if your car is parked illegally and there's signs that say, you can't park here. We told you, hours, whatever that says between the signs. Does that mean that they can just take and impound your car and throw it away? Yes. So I think you could all, you went to law school now and you've aced the 4th and 14th Amendment. So you're all correct. The courts have all said that's right. The government cannot just take your property. It has to have a process before it takes it. And if for some reason it has to take it immediately for an emergency or there's a special circumstance, it has to give you a way to get it back. And it has to keep that property. It can't just throw it away and destroy it. And this holds true no matter how much the property is worth, right? It doesn't matter if it is a Cadillac or if it's a backpack. It doesn't matter if it's dirty. It doesn't matter if it's muddy or it's wet or if it's in less than perfect condition. The Constitution still applies. And it also doesn't matter, turns out the courts have said, if you're violating a city ordinance or a law, right? That doesn't take away your constitutional rights, particularly under the 4th and 14th Amendment of the US Constitution. All right, so let's talk about the sweeps in Seattle and what's actually happening on the ground. And I think that I'm going to try to do my best to just kind of share words from our plaintiffs, words from people that we've been talking to, and photos and videos, because I think without actually being on the ground, seeing what it looks like, I think it's really hard sometimes for us to kind of visualize it ourselves, right? I have never had the government come in and tell me I need to be, and I can't be in a certain spot because of whatever reason they want to give. I've never had them just come and take my property. And I think it's hard to imagine how that actually happens or how that could happen in a city like Seattle, where we, I think, really pride ourselves on being compassionate and being caring and being progressive. So generally what happens is the city, for any number of justifications, decides that it wants to clear an area where people are camping. Sometimes it's, they give a public health and safety justification. Sometimes it's someone complains. Sometimes it's the type of property. Any type of reason they might give, but they decide they want to clear it. And they'll come in and they will do just that. They'll clear it. So these are quotes from a couple people who we submitted declarations or testimony from about their experience in a sweep in the past few years. And as you can see, the first one was a woman named Love McCoy. And just before Christmas, she was out for the day doing activities as we all do, right? We go to work, we go to school, maybe we go get coffee, or we go do whatever we're trying to do. And she came back, and all of her stuff was piled up in garbage bags at the side of the road, and everything was destroyed. I'll tell you a little bit about the impact that this had on Love later on, but she essentially has been, since then, afraid to sleep anywhere. So she would sleep on the bus for fear that if she slept somewhere else, all of her stuff would be gone when she woke up, and she wouldn't settle down anywhere in Seattle out of fear that if she left or if she got comfortable, that this would happen again to her. Another person that had submitted a declaration in a litigation told this story. So she went to go get coffee down the street. She was gone for less than an hour, and she came back, and within that time period, all of her stuff and all the stuff from everyone else that lived in her neighborhood and in her community was gone. And I'll talk a little bit more about the impact that that had on her. Her name was Anna Gibson, but she still has yet to get any of those belongings back. Sometimes what happens is the city does come in and they give you a little bit of information, right? So in the case of Timothy Alexander, he got 30 minutes to move his stuff out. And they kind of picked up his flap, said, you have 30 minutes to move. Whatever you can take, you can take. If not, the rest will be thrown away. Timothy, unfortunately, has a really severe back disability. And so he wasn't able to move the vast majority of many of his belongings because he couldn't physically carry them himself. And he couldn't put all of it in his backpack. And I don't know about you, I always think I don't have a lot of stuff, but I just moved recently, and I was like, oh, I'm pretty minimalist. I have, just a few things here and there, and then it was like 20 boxes just for the kitchen, and then 20 boxes for the bathroom. So imagine if you just have 30 minutes to pack up all that stuff and get it to be somewhere else. So what we've also seen is that sometimes there's these things called postings or notices, and what ends up happening is they're really confusing, just in and of itself, right? I see the sign and I'm like, okay, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do, so I'm supposed to move my stuff at some time. But they also usually have a lot of conflicting information. So the one on the left, you'll see, and maybe you can't see it actually. So it says it's posted at 8 o'clock a.m. People were supposed to move their stuff. The problem, though, is that the city posted this notice at 5 o'clock p.m. So retroactively, people were supposed to know that they should have moved their stuff, I guess, at 8 a.m. For this notice on the right, you'll see, for example, it says that people have 72 hours to move their stuff. But in effect, the time that they tell them they have to leave is less than 72 hours. It's like 66 hours. So people are left, do I have to move it in 66 hours? Do I have to move it in 72 hours? Do I have to move it at all? Because the other problem is a lot of times no one shows up, or they show up early, or they show up on a different day. And the issue why notice is so important, because I think sometimes it gets lost as to like, why do why should we care about notice in particular? It's because it takes time to move, right? We've all moved from one place to another place, and it takes you more than 30 minutes. It usually takes you more than 3 days. I don't know about you. Maybe I have a lot more stuff than I thought I did. But it takes time to physically pack up your stuff, to physically move your stuff, and to find another place to live, especially when you're living in a city that tells you you're not supposed to be here, you're not supposed to be here, you're not supposed to be anywhere. So what does a sweep actually look like when they're coming in and clearing an area? I'm going to show you a video of one of the sweeps, hopefully, from last year. And all right, it looks, So as it's loading, I'll read you a quote from one of our plaintiffs who was in this sweep. Oh. Put it on the screen. All right, well, I will describe to you the video, and it's actually on our website, so it's no problem. Oh gosh. Okay. So yeah, you can find it on our website, but I'll read to you kind of how our plaintiff described this particular sweep and what happened to him. So his name is Reeve Washington, and he said, as soon as the city cleared people from a part of the camp, it began knocking down and breaking apart tents, many of which were full of people's property. The city would knock out tent legs, snap poles, and use box cutters or knives, whatever it took to get the tent down. The city never asked about the owner of the tents. It just destroyed the tent and whatever was in it. The city then threw all of the tents and the property inside into big piles across the camp and bulldozed everything. There was no opportunity for people to get their stuff back once it was heaped into a pile. It was immediately destroyed. And because it was raining, everything was immediately made wet and soiled. The way the tents were taken down and the belongings piled into a mound, it was clear that the city was doing stuff to make sure the property couldn't be used in case someone came back to get it. So this is an aftermath of what is getting an aftermath of the sweep. This is what's happening during a sweep, right? So on the left, you actually see a bulldozer gathering a bunch of belongings. In the right, you see a garbage truck full of belongings or full of property getting sent to the dump. This is an aftermath as well of a sweep, and I think that's important because a lot of the times these pictures get shared as before photos, and this is what happens actually after the city comes in. It's not a photo of an encampment before the sweep takes place. And as you can see, everything's torn down. Even if there were things that had been salvaged or salvageable, they're now ruined because of the weather and the elements. And this is the same area. It's just you can see now a day later, I think a few hours later, everything is piled now into this mound with garbage, with mud, with rain. So these are just an example from things we've heard from people that are living outside about the types of items that they've lost. And people are losing things that are not just, I think it's easy to think like, oh, okay, if I lose, I don't care about my stuff, right? It's just stuff, I can get new stuff. But we have a lot of stuff that we really, really need to survive, right? Like we need to have shelter, we need to have clothing. A lot of us rely upon important medications. We need to have food. We need to have a way to cook that food or to eat that food. We've heard of people losing hundreds of dollars in sweeps. Important documents like identification, there are court documents, and identification is so essential for many reasons. One, it's your identity. You have to have it for many reasons, but for people that are living outside or for who are houseless in particular, you also need it for a lot of times to get into a shelter. People are losing cell phones. So we had an individual whose phone was swept, and so she couldn't call to even get information about what had happened to her remaining belongings because she had no phone or way to get a hold of people. People are losing items for work. We had a plaintiff, Lisa Hooper, one of our named plaintiffs, who lost photos of her daughters and baby teeth that she had been keeping from them from their childhood for over 20 years that were taken. We've had people who told us stories of losing eulogies of their deceased parents, the last photos of family members, family histories that they had been recording and holding on to, jewelry from family members or important, costly, expensive jewelry. So immediately, right, there's this loss of property that can definitely have a physical or an emotional and psychological toll. But it can also have a really significant physical toll. So for example, we had one individual who submitted testimony about how she has a lot of back issues and she has fibromyalgia, and they took her mattress. So now she has nothing to sleep on, which has been exacerbating all of her physical disabilities. We had talked to a social worker who talked to individuals who lost medication that they needed, and then were placed in this, like, do I go get the medication, or do I go get my ID, or do I go get my other materials that I lost? One of our organizational plaintiffs is the Episcopal Diocese, and there was an individual that they had talked to on the grounds of St. Luke's Church who had lost insulin and then went into a diabetic shock or coma. There's also, one of our plaintiffs has epilepsy, right? So she might have lost, if she loses her seizure medication, that can be really problematic. And the sweeps themselves are also triggering of her seizures. We have people who are losing medication, like so this is a picture of medication that was found after a sweep by a volunteer who had actually gone through materials after the sweep had occurred to see if there was anything that there was left to salvage. And then the right is just showing, again, like the types of items that are being destroyed. So we're talking about effects on individuals, but what's the point? What's it doing for the community, right? We know that the sweeps cost a lot of money. There can be upwards of, 10 plus police officers and individuals employed by the city or by the Washington State Department of Transportation that are doing these sweeps. It costs money to gather all of this stuff and dispose of it. And it's not doing anything, right? We keep seeing these sweeps happening on a daily, if not near daily basis, and we're not seeing any efforts to address the actual underlying issues which are used to justify conducting the sweeps. So a lot of times we hear, well, people are, the encampments are dirty. There's a lot of garbage. But there's no effort to pick up the garbage. There's waste, but there aren't any public restrooms. So you can take away people's stuff, but they're still gonna have to use the restroom, and they're still gonna have garbage, and they're still gonna be homeless. And so we're not fixing by kicking them out of public space and taking their stuff, we're not solving any of the underlying issues that are used to justify conducting the sweeps to begin with. So this is one of our plaintiffs. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to be here today, but I'm sure you will see him again. His name is Ruby Washington, and you can also, he's in our annual report, and you can read his story, and I would really encourage you to do so. But what I really love is how optimistic Ruby is and how passionate that he is about his community. And I thought we could just kind of leave off with this quote, which he said, which is, "Everyone is hoping for more time, and then the day comes and they don't have anywhere to go." I think we can do better, and I think we can give people a place to go. At the very least, we don't need to prevent them from making it more difficult for them to go somewhere. All done.